Everyone, welcome back to the Wrestling Prep Podcast. We're here with head coach Carolyn Wester, and I know looking behind you, you're in Colorado, just finishing up a clinic this week. I'm excited to have you down here in Arizona next week. So
Me
this is
too.
your sort of pre-camp tour of the country with clinics all over the place, right?
Yeah, that's for sure. I just finished in Norfolk on the western side of Colorado, and now I'm in Silverthorne near where my son lives. And then I fly out Monday to you,
Yep.
and then immediately go to Minneapolis, and from Minneapolis to Davenport, Iowa, and then from Iowa to Montana. And then I'm back about 3 days and week one starts.
All right. Yeah, that's exciting. Yeah, we're excited to have you next week. All right. So tell us what you wanted to talk about today.
Yeah, I think I'm really interested in talking about what sequential muscle order is exactly versus what it's conceived of by other people. I recently was in Las Vegas speaking at a high level event. I was having some conversation with some leaders in the MMA community, and I was asked a specific question. And in my effort to answer, someone I'd met less than 3 hours spoke over me and was trying to put what I do into a box that they understood,
Okay.
in which there was no relevance between the two.
Yeah.
And I think one of the most common, I'd like to talk about one, the most common um, comment you and I get, and anybody who teaches sequential muscle or body leveraging, is that this is tumbling.
Hmm.
And two, what it actually is and how it actually works in the nomenclature, and what the differences are between what sequential muscle order is and what other systems that people use to train athletes are.
Okay.
So I think from the very beginning, in tumbling, there's some concepts that I want to cover, and then we'll say what it is in tumbling and what it is in sequential muscle order. To me, sequential muscle order is an organized system of movement that teaches athletes to create sequence and transfer force through the body in a precise muscular order. And in my estimation, tumbling focuses on completing specific skills that are judged to be successful or not successful based on adherence to specific guidelines. Sequential muscle order optimizes force, and force is built, coordinated, and transferred, resulting in the high-end athletic results. So you can see I'm reading off some notes because I wanted to
Hmm.
make sure I was saying this exactly as I wanted to this time. So it's really important to me. So one of the concepts that I think a lot of people are looking for when their athletes are beginning an MMA sport, whether wrestling or um, jiu-jitsu, is coordination. They want their athlete to be more coordinated, but really tumbling is a disorganized use of muscle. So they're asking the athlete to throw themselves, um, just do this tumbling move. And you see it all the time. I see people who come to me and they can't backflip or back handspring simply because the order in which they're using their muscles, their parts of the muscles in that chain aren't strong yet because they've never activated them. So
Hmm.
instead of adhering to learning how to activate those muscles, they go to a tumbling gymnastics center where they have like these big round things that teach them how to go backwards, but they're making a round shape because they're trying to adhere to what it looks like to make what it looks like to be scored correctly, which is not what we're trying to do at all. We're trying to create force. So where is, in terms of coordination, tumbling is disorganized, with sequential muscle order, body leveraging, it is precisely ordered. It's precisely ordered in the muscles that we're going to use. Timing, big issue in MMA and in wrestling, as everybody knows. For tumbling, it is simultaneous and random, right? So timing really depends on if they've completed the mandatory structures they're supposed to adhere to, and timing is random based on the rhythm of the music or other factors. But for us, it's a time sequence.
Hmm.
Every muscle order is timed, and many times when I'm teaching, initially an athlete will do the body leveraging and it'll be a little disjointed while they learn to transfer their weights and to ask their muscles to work on the first story and the second story. But it doesn't take very long before I'm talking to them almost like the thing on the piano. What's that thing called?
The metronome.
The metronome.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
metronome, and I'm like, okay, you've got the order. Now we're going to do it in precise cadence. And I'm
yeah.
like, 1, 2, 3. So our timing is sequenced, and I think that's important. One of the concepts is force. Force in tumbling it sort of leaks everywhere. It's like when somebody does a running back handspring and to a multiple flips and twist in the air, the force when they push off the mat in gymnastics, they have to maintain it and try to hold it, but it can get really disjointed. But for sequential muscle order, it's built and transferred. So the very exact put together movements and muscle order will build the force and transfer it into the technique. And you could start in a piece of technique, shooting, coming off bottom, striking, whatever it is you're doing, but you can build it from the muscle order right into the technique, which I think is very important.
Yeah, yeah.
In general, I think for control, sequential muscle order is very high control and tumbling is very low control. We have a lot of athletes who come to us who've had gymnastics background, tumbling background, and it does not transfer to successful technique.
Hmm.
It might make them more flexible,
Yeah, yeah,
but we need flexibility, I think, that is strong and controlled.
yeah, right.
Yeah, and a lot of tumbling could appear, scrambly and chaotic, and sequential muscle order is very smooth and powerful. And I think the outcomes for tumbling is often more inconsistent, whereas in sequential muscle order, it's repeatable and very efficient. And some of those are some of the things. I think several important distinctions between tumbling and sequential muscle order is sequential muscle order has ordered activation, force accumulates and transfers, deliberate timing, organized mechanics, and repeatable outcome. And often with tumbling, it's simultaneous effort, force dissipates in random timing, chaotic appearance, and variable outcome. And I think that is a big distinguisher between, teaching an athlete to tumble or do gymnastics versus sequential muscle order. I recently had a family reach out, very nice family, who wanted to come and train, and his sentence began with, my kids will be tumbling, 2 times a week for the next year, and then we want to come to your tumbling class.
Hmm.
And that was really, hard for me to hear because that's what people think I'm doing, is that I'm
Right.
teaching tumbling. But we're not teaching tumbling at all.
Is it right to say, when I sometimes think about these things, it seems as though tumbling kind of starts with the end in mind. Like I want to do a backflip or I want to do a
Correct.
handspring, and the how you get to that end isn't really important as long as you can do the thing, whether that be a backflip or a handspring, or as long as I can do that, how I got there doesn't really matter. But in sequential muscle order, the end is a consequence of where you started with all of this precisely ordered time sequence. You're building and transferring force. At the end, you get something that might look similar, but you've started in a place where the how you get there is much more important than the actual appearance of what may appear like tumbling. It's you had to get there through a specific, precisely ordered time sequence of muscle contractions that allow for force transfer. Whereas if you're just interested in tumbling, you don't really care about how you got there. You just want to
The
be able to
result.
do the thing.
It's super disheartening when I go somewhere and I've traveled a long distance and the host says to me, my team just wants to learn how to backflip.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whoa, the likelihood of them, most of these athletes being able to even do that sequential muscle order is extremely limited, but the result they put on the tumbling is not the same as the result that we want to achieve
Right.
with technique or, control in the sport. I think many great trainers and coaches, have systems and um they call out, they have concepts, but I think body leveraging is the only one that trains to teach concepts physically rather than explaining,
Mhm.
biomechanically. And a lot of times people want to say or try to categorize what we do biomechanically, but I just don't think it's not the same.
Yeah, and part of it, I don't even know. We've known each other for what, 13 years or so now,
Correct.
and even in your last visit, I don't know that I fully understood some of the, especially things like a backflip, for example. There are elements of muscle contractions that cause the backflip. Then you can correct me if I'm even misunderstanding
Yeah,
this now,
you are. You are. So
but
you keep referring to contractions, a
okay,
series of contractions,
yeah, yeah,
but it's not. You use the muscle and you build a structure. And
okay,
once the structure is built, then you use muscle order to create the force
okay,
to move that. I think where you're getting contracting from is in the initial call out of muscle
right,
order
okay,
before we begin anything. Contract your calves, expand your calves,
okay.
pull up your quads, pull up your quads.
That's more of a start position, and then they're moving that
Correct.
starting position through. But I saw you. There were several athletes there, younger ones especially, that weren't either comfortable or not able to perform the backflip, for example. And you were just having them jump as high as they can and bring their knees up to their chest as a way. It seems like sometimes some of those movements, the backflip in this case is a situation where you can't do that slow. And so it's forcing the athlete to exert themselves maximally through that through
Definitely.
that movement. And
Go,
so
go
yeah.
ahead. Sorry.
No, and there are other like, in strength and conditioning things like plyometrics and things. There are other things, other types of exercise where your job is to make sure the athlete can't do something slow, and so you're sort of forcing that force transfer to occur, the power development to occur in that case, and so by going through these passes where they're exerting themselves maximally, so maximum force in the shortest amount of time. And some of it is that it seems like that to me at least is that some of these not only is the movement beneficial to their wrestling and transfers directly into their technique, but they have to do it in a way that it's fast because you can't do a lot of these movements really slowly.
So I'm not sure if I'm hearing you accurately or
Okay.
what I think I hear you saying, but I'm not real super familiar with
Yeah,
plyometrics.
yeah. It's
I'm
just
not
basically
educated.
jumping as high or as
So
far as you can in a
the sequential muscle order for executing a backflip where you are able to take your structure you build with your body straight up, rotate at the top, and land directly down is to be specific to technique.
okay,
So
right,
when someone isn't ready to execute that movement, I'm not telling them to jump as high in the air. That's not what I'm asking them. I'm
right,
asking them to use the same sequential muscle order, but how they're going to create the force is not going to force them to feel like they're going to crack their head going
right,
backwards. So I do ask them to go calf hamstring, pull back the transverse ab, hit the glute hinge, pull their sternum up, go up, keep their ears over their shoulders, over their hips, pull their
hmm
knees to their chest, and then go to the L level stance with all the series of 90-degree angles.
right,
And but because it is specific to technique. But however, none of, like you're stating, none of this that we're doing is slow.
right,
The only time that we're building muscles in duress for where they're holding for long periods of time is partially set training for competition, and so they can have all their muscles maximized to be able to do the sequential muscle order. There is a big, no, there's a large proponent, we've talked about, I think, in the last couple of podcasts, of athletes who find themselves in this situation where their breathing changes and they become gassed in a situation which they can hold normally easily. And that helps them understand that they're feeling emotion and how to deal with emotion. Transferring a force is going to be rapid.
Hmm.
It is going to be rapid. What carries it further than what most people realize is that they're going to be it's the number of muscle orders they can put together, and the body leveraging sequencing put it together. Some people can do one, but to do the front handspring shoot, second story pivot, over, under, back flip, back handspring, back flip, shoot again, that's not something that they can do. So I think we're able to take force and create it and apply it at a stronger, higher rate, and with more specific fast timing.
And I think, does that get at some of the sort of inconsistency and chaos you were thinking about with tumbling as well? Is what's one of the differences when I watch your athletes go through some of the body lever or some of the sequential muscle order things is that, as you said, they're in a position when they finish one, that they can then transfer that force into another movement rather than just sort of finishing and jumping off and just feeling happy having accomplished their one movement or their one tumbling pass, the one thing they were trying to accomplish, that they can then take that and they're landing in a position, or not even landing, but they're putting themselves in a position at the end of one technique, or one position, so that they can then transfer that into something else immediately, which is
Correct.
how wrestling would look in a match, or fighting, or whatever you're doing.
Correct.
You can't ever be out of position and in a place where you're not able to exert or transfer force. And so by going through one thing after the other, they're forced to be organized, as you've used that word a few times as well, in a
Yeah.
way that allows them to transfer to the next thing.
Well, I think we see a lot of people, coaches, parents say, "Oh, your athletes look so smooth. Our athletes aren't smooth." And I think it is from the sort of chaotic methodology of technique, where when they're being trained, they only train to the shot or to and through a shot, but they don't train all the way, all the situations that can happen afterwards. So our athletes often do look smoother because in actuality, they are. It's a practiced skill. They've learned to create force and apply it. And that's not something that others do. It's so interesting to me to have athletes who are around that are a high level. I consider USA world team members, even age world team members,
Mhm.
to be pretty elite, for our country.
Yeah.
And they always are saying how difficult the practices that I coach are compared to other coaches. And where I think what we do differs is that I'm going to make sure that they can transfer that force. They can body leverage. They can do the sequential muscle order that directly correlates to the technique that we're working on. And I think that's something that others don't do. They teach the technique and they're feeling through repetition or strength and conditioning,
Hmm.
or tumbling, that's going to make it smooth and more effective. But in actuality, it probably is not. That their ability to um, do better in all competitive sports through sequential muscle order, I suspect is very high. I'm not promising that, but so far, we have found that to be a direct correlation. And then, what do you think about that?
No, I could see where that would be more difficult, especially when we think about muscle use, because oftentimes when we're drilling technique. It's do one thing and then sort of relax and then do another thing and then just relax. And a lot of wrestlers wrestle that way. They sort of wrestle through positions when they're attacking or and then will kind of relax after that. But in these sorts of activities where you're using sequential muscle order, there is no relaxing. You're always in a position where you can build and transfer force and move to the next thing. And so instead of just doing something and then relaxing and then doing something again, you're going from one thing to the other, to the other, to the other. And you're always conscious of being in a position where you can actually transfer force and score points in the next sequence rather than just be happy with where you might have found yourself after the one small energy exertion that you.
Well, yes, and yes, for sure. And then when you apply strategy
Mhm.
or just logistics of a match, the length of the circumference of the mat, all those things together, sequential muscle order, really makes a huge difference
Well,
in those things. And I'm fine. Oh, were you gonna say something,
no,
Bryce?
we tell our kids all the time that the in lots of situations, it's the person that stops wrestling first is the one that's going to lose that situation. And when you're able to do all of these techniques down a really long mat, then and put seven, several different techniques together and wrestle in that way, you're not going to be the one that feels the need to quit in a scrambling
That's
situation
for sure.
first.
And that makes all the difference in the world.
Mhm.
Bo Bassett says all the time that, it's his machine gun mindset and
Right.
how he moves, and
Mhm.
he doesn't quit, and that beats other people. And there's truth to that. He exhausts
Mhm.
them, where his
Right.
opponent had not have equivalent training. But you take somebody with Bo's the ability to go, and then apply sequential muscle order to it through body leveraging, then his ability to eclipse other athletes who maybe have a better body position,
Mhm.
and the technique that he's calling to the forefront is predicated on the other opponent being in bad body position.
Right.
That would help an athlete of that caliber translate, more quickly.
Yeah, and I think we've all been in situations too where the opposite is also true, that if you're in good position all of the time and you're really hard to move, that tires the other guy out really
Right.
quickly as well. So it's real easy to push someone around who's kind of relaxed and loose and just kind of going through the motions, and it might look the same from the stands, but I think a lot of people have been in matches and in situations where if you have an opponent that's in good position and really hard to move, not only is it frustrating mentally, but physically, it's exhausting to wrestle with someone like that because you can't. No
No,
matter what you try, you're just
it's not gonna work. And then,
yeah.
and so in your mind, when you're wrestling against that person especially if they're in an L-level stance or a math-based
Mhm.
body position, the amount of technique you can roll through that you've learned that's going to be ineffective against it is extremely high. So now not only
Yep.
is it exhausting physically,
Yep.
it's exhausting mentally,
Right.
and it's exacerbated potentially by the person in the corner not looking at their opponent and recognize that there's a series of 90-degree angles, or there's a body position they're unfamiliar with. Their assumptive protocol is to say that their athlete, the one who doesn't have an answer for good body position, is at fault.
Hmm.
And that's just not true. It's a matter of strategy and wanting to learn be willing to learn other things.
Hmm.
And I think in wrestling, certainly in MMA, and then now in the number of other professional sports organizations that are reaching out to us for us to consult and teach, that it's making a big difference in sports.
Yeah, I could definitely see that.
We've had recently we've had what's the saying? The more popular you get, the more attention is drawn to you. And as you know, and I know, and my birth children know, I'm not really on social media. That we have a professional person that we hired who puts together the reels, and
Hmm.
I may speak over them, or suggest what could be in the caption, but I'm not a big active social media person because I'm not super interested in what anybody has to say
Right.
or what they think about what I do. So I'm really spending more time. I've spent more time here recently fine tuning the exactness of what we do and why and how, and documenting it
Hmm.
so that we can, here in the near future, start to speak of it in even a more effective, easier to learn, easier for another coach to acclimate to it. And I think even in the camps I've done in April and May, that when I've been given the video back of the camps, my ability to articulate what I want and why is increasing dramatically. And I'm really happy about that. I feel very strongly that I can speak for myself about what I do.
Right.
And I feel very strongly that there are a limited number of people who've interacted with me who can speak about what I do. So I am making an effort to be more exact. And that's why, I really wanted to do this podcast. It's been hard for me to do it because a lot of what I teach, I actually see in my head
Right.
and I've never been educated to do. But the desire to explain it and to be able to show the differences is very important to me. The last thing I want ever is for a family who's working hard, trying to make ends meet, or whatever level of economics, to look at what we do at Wrestling Prep and say, I need to invest in my kids going to tumbling because that is not the same.
Right.
And as the co-author of the courses with me, you know that that's true. And of course, we have new things going to be rolled out here probably before December of 2026. But it's real important to me that people understand in an exact movement is the difference between escalating velocity and strength of impact on an opponent, whether shooting, passing by, coming off bottom, that all those exact details matter. And
Yeah.
learning them and taking the time to learn them is so vital. And it's kind of interesting. Recently, I was living my day and I had an Olympic gold medalist, um, former UFC world champ, all contact me in one day asking for specific input into their training. And when I share what I do, it's interesting. Some of them say, wow, that's so detailed. And in my mind, I think this person is such a great athlete. I wonder how much better they'll be when they're executing sequential muscle order and all the technique that they've already done.
Right.
There's sequential muscle order that I do that corresponds directly to technique that
Mhm.
I've either refined or created myself. It's a lot of pieces of technique have a very strange vernacular, and it's completely something that I saw or maybe Drew Morgan saw, and we
Yeah.
applied to technique. But and all the athletes who come to me and reach out to me and say how much we've affected them, they may never execute an exact piece of technique, but
Mhm.
all the technique they do
Right.
has been exponentially enhanced because they've learned to do sequential muscle order and body leveraging.
Yeah. So that family that goes to that tumbling class because they saw some of your athletes do what they think is tumbling is that they're sort of that athlete is sort of gathering a bag of tricks, I guess, that they can execute at the end. And the same seems to be the case when someone goes to a
Some
wrestling camp where they're just learning a whole bunch of technique without a lot of thought behind position and um,
or or even to see if it's structurally sound.
right,
I mean, it's like it would be similar to someone buying a boat and then pulling it up in the winter, and they eyed some structure, but they didn't test to see how deep the pylons needed to go, what the base of the lake was. They don't create and test these things. They just press in wrestling and sports the technique,
Right.
or they imagine that it's going to be okay. They don't put that time and effort forward. And that's a very important distinction. I don't want people to spend money going to tumbling.
Yeah, yeah.
There's other things that they could be spent on with their athletes, and probably things that are more important are nutrition, or making sure they have a functioning mindset,
Hmm.
that they're looking forward to success, and not carrying with them things that are going to impede their success.
Yeah, and even as you said earlier, even if an athlete never executes any of the direct technique that you teach, but as long if they're thinking about how they're doing the technique that they already do and put themselves in better position throughout the movements that they already do because of the fact that they've done some sequential muscle order, that they're going to be miles more successful than just being interested in executing the technique, because how you do these things is at least as important as actually what you do um, in the end.
Well, certainly this past week in Western Colorado at North Forks High School, we had a huge turnout, and there was some um, really elite high school athletes there, and they were mesmerized with how effective a series of sequential muscle order was against a stronger, older, more experienced athlete
Mhm.
in the sport of wrestling. And when we would push, we'd let them push all their lifting, man muscle, years of experience against a wide leg with a 180-degree rotation on the lead foot,
Yep.
and a 90-degree, or maybe a 45-degree replacement movement with their trail leg, and then take them over from ref's position. It was incredible. Literally, we had a 160-pound, unbelievable athlete coach, not, right at the in the same range as American athletes are still
Mhm.
competing internationally
Yeah, yeah.
against what are you gonna say?
No, it's
Oh, yeah,
just
against a 17-year-old Colorado state champ, maybe like Reno TOC All-American, right? And then he was just so much stronger and powerful.
mm,
And he lined up on this athlete's, left side, and he just kept moving. And I just taught him how to do it that day, how
right.
to do that sequential muscle order that day. But he believed me, so he did it, and he rotated his lead foot 180 degrees, and he ended up taking the other, reversing and taking the other person down. And it was just, this group was just mesmerized with how all of them felt they were so much better.
Mm.
And I think what I'm finding now is that there are more adults who were wrestlers, male and female, who are in their early 30s. Maybe their kid is somewhere between 6 to 20, but they're in their 30s, maybe early 40s. How they are much more open-minded to the realities of something new,
Mhm.
as opposed to it having to be the way it's always been, which has just been a really exciting part of before wrestling prep summer camps in
Right.
Virginia, into that I'm finding, and that a lot of the adults are willing to and want to get on the floor and try it, and they're not getting so frustrated with their athlete and wanting to tell them how to do it without actually trying it themselves. And I see and feel an upward movement. But we could talk about this all day.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I
I
just,
I wonder how
I,
much jujitsu has with that too, because a lot of people in that age group sometimes transition from wrestling into jujitsu. So they have this mindset that they're allowed to continue learning new things. Whereas perhaps the older generation, once they stepped off the mat and decided that they wanted to be a coach, their learning sort of stopped there, and everything that they had been taught to that point was good, and everything that they were to be taught from that point forward was not. And so keeping that open mind and that
it just,
mindset that I can still learn new things, and that I can have a different perspective. And
well, it's so interesting in that whole, in that group of people I'm talking about, Olympic gold medalist, and then I would say top three in the world jujitsu, and then along with the other sports. I forgot to throw that person in there too. I mean, they are looking, they're open-minded, and I don't even know if you realize that in our registrants for summer 2026, I'm pretty sure we have three UFC fighters,
oh yeah,
athletes, children signed up.
okay, yeah,
And then of course you and I know that there's at least one former UFC world champ
hmm,
coming to camp.
yeah, yeah,
I suspect too. So to me and then I just got off the phone last night with Liam McGarry, who's a former Bellator light heavyweight world champ, who, is going to bring me out to Oahu. All of these types of athletes see, the future in what we've been doing and what we're doing. And one of the UFC world champ was saying how he believes that it's going to have a lot to do with longevity, and even he was a champ before my guys were all champs. So the guys I associate with,
hmm,
mm, my guys, I guess,
yeah,
depends on, people are so people that I could get on the phone who would drop what they were doing and fly across the country to take care of me if I asked them to. Those guys,
yeah,
before they were all world champs,
hmm,
this guy was a world champ. And he said that he's signing up, or he's signed up to come because he thinks it's going to affect his longevity of life. And he wants to take it and use it with other athletes,
yeah,
in MMA that he works with.
yeah. That's awesome.
And I think so too.
All right. Well, was there anything that we missed? I know that there's probably much more to talk about around these things, but was there
Well, I
anything
think
else you wanted to talk about today?
I don't think so. I just want to get it out there
Yeah.
as part of the conversation, and so people can explain it. I think this past week, or whenever U23s was, this week, last week, Tyler Lillard went up in my version of a tripod
Hmm.
and did an over-under finish, which got a lot of attention. And then I just heard about it. I mean, you tagged me.
I sent it to you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
I
sent
saw
it to me. You
it.
sent it to me, right? Because I'm not really on social media, but
Yeah.
you sent it to me, and I sent it to our guy,
Yeah.
and then I pulled up some video of
I think Chrissy
some other
was in it.
athletes. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
Chrissy, some
Hmm.
other athletes, and then today David White sent some video over of Emery doing
Okay.
the same thing.
Yeah.
But Tina Lillard reached out to me because she was enraged at the number of people who either said, I taught Tyler that, or said that was luck. And she's like, absolutely not. It's a long time adherence and practicing of wrestling prep technique and body leveraging, and having Carolyn as one of his coaches.
Right.
But
Yeah.
that she's
At
just
that level,
so,
you don't really hit things, luckily.
well,
That's
you know
not-
what she told me? You know what she told me? Yeah, you can't. No, no, there's no
Yeah.
luck to that.
Right.
You know what
Right.
she told me? That there were actually people who pulled up that video and said that I was a fraud, and that all the stuff that I said and the vernacular I used was fraudulent. And it just made me laugh. I'm like, how can anybody look through our social media
Yeah.
or our Facebook and not see the number of people, or how many, of all these people? But that just made me realize also that if it is my goal, and I think it is my goal at my age, to want to give the opportunity to teach all of this to as many people as
Hmm.
possible, then I'm going to have to make more of an effort to do podcasts like this, refine how I describe it, apply it, in different types of courses and things available online, hopefully in the near future. And, to leave this as one of the biggest tools to
Hmm.
help an athlete execute what they want to do and feel good about themselves and play chess with their mind and their body, all the things I love about wrestling and I love about, I've learned to love about MMA. That we're gonna have to have more of these conversations. So
Yeah.
I apologize for my awkwardness initially. I'm
No.
even wearing my glasses so I can read, but it's only because I sincerely care and I'm trying to help people understand, really what we're
Yeah.
doing.
No, this structured presentation of these ideas was definitely helpful to me, and I've been around you for a while, and so I imagine for someone who was newer to these things that being able to kind of think about these things in a structured way, not just the what you're doing, but why and how, in an organized way like this, I think is certainly helpful. So
Well, and there's two things, two things that well, I can't remember the first one I was gonna say. I think what I want to say about this, for someone who is autistic and sees these things in their head combined with my sincere desire to be by myself and left
mhm.
alone and not have to speak out loud. But I'm sure people hear this and go, I think that's crazy. But being outgoing has been a learned
Yeah,
skill
yeah,
based on my parents' career. I really sincerely want to be as articulate as possible and explain it. And it is hard for me to put it, I could show it or teach you to execute it or have you use your muscles and you'll feel it. I did laugh this past week in Colorado in a fun way, but we had one particular parent who was clearly a lifter and in really great shape and was so super about letting his 12-year-old do what they wanted to do and learn it. But he asked me about a particular muscle, and I said, "Is it okay to poke you there?" And he's like, "Sure." And I poked, and he's like, "I have no muscle there." I said, "You have
yeah,
no active muscle there.
right,
It's there."
yeah,
And then he poked me, and he was like, "Okay." And just even showing him this basic movement,
hmm,
he's like, "I can't believe you could do that, and I can't do it." And I said, "I'd be stunned if you could do it if you hadn't been practicing it a long
right,
time because
yeah, yeah.
it just doesn't work that way." So anyway, I could ramble on a
All
long
right.
time.
No, this has been great. I see it's gotten dark behind you, so have a great night. I'm excited to see you for a few days next week.
I know I can't
And
wait. Well, it's
yeah,
like in 2 days.
yeah,
In two
yeah.
days, I'll be there, and there's so many athletes coming too. So I'm really excited.
That'll be great. So yeah, have a good night. We'll see you in a few days.
All right, sugar.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Bye.